So what we do is basically we provide monitoring services for most of the MSN websites. We don't do for PowerPoint, Expedia. They have their own stuff. So in case of Home Advisor, that's mainly because there is a plan to spin them off, and so they have their own operation setup. But otherwise, we provide monitoring services for everybody in MSN website. What we do is like we constantly monitor the website, the servers, the IPs, the URLs on it. We collect the data, and if there is a problem in real time, we alert SOC, our tier 1 support center. Then they cut a ticket, they try to work on the problem. We expect them to generally solve most of the problems. The way they solve the problem is for each property or each site, we call them property, they have a troubleshooting guide. So before the tier 1, the SOC, takes over the support for a property, for example, let's say MSN.com, the system engineers that work on MSN.com, they write something called troubleshooting guide. So they tell these are the problems that you expect, and this is what you do, like maybe stop service or reboot the box in the worst case scenario. They have try out these things. When the problem is solved, then basically they close the ticket. So we expect most of the problems to be solved by the troubleshooting guide. But let's say if there is a problem which is not listed in the troubleshooting guide, what they do is they don't try to figure out anything on their own. They don't do any research. We don't want tier 1 to, we're not saying don't think about it, the problem, but we don't want them to go and take some action where it will bring down the website. So we want them to escalate to tier 2. Tier 2 works on that problem, and next time they'll fill it in the troubleshooting guide to see what is the solution that for this in this case scenario. Sometimes it might not go through tier 2 because we might already know that it's a networking problem. So SOC might, or the tier 1 directly escalates the problem to the network engineers. We might come to know maybe switch is down, so we don't even escalate within here. We go back to the DC ops who manages Canyon Park data center. They wake them up and say, okay, your switch is down, go ahead and fix the problem. Generally that is the process, that how the problems get resolved. Yep, that's only the reactive phase. Then in the last 6 months we are taking the ops to the proactive mode. What we are doing is we are collecting the data this real time. We collect about 5 gigabytes worth of data. Different perf counters, like for example one of them is the download time, which we already have. Another one is like the content errors, and same case with perf counters, which we are working on. What we do is we collect all this data, we trend it to see why this problem is happening. Suppose if the download time went up from 1 second to 1.5 seconds, we want to know why it went up. It might be because of a software upgrade in the website, maybe the new bits, or maybe our traffic went up, that means we didn't do capacity planning well. Or if you're getting lots of content errors, what we did, this is one of the proactive ways we did. Earlier we used to have lots of content errors. What is a content error is basically if there is a reference in the HTML code for any GIF, it doesn't matter whether it is being used or not. You could have a client-side logic which saying if then else, but if there is, like you might say, if 1 equal to 2, execute this, else execute this. We know that it will always be executed on the else side. But if 1 equal to 2, then do that. In the do that side, if we have references to images, Keynote, one of the third-party companies, generally what industry follows by, considers the page to be not available. If there is a reference to an image, that image should be available. So you might see the page looks all right, but the page might look all right, but we still consider the page to be not available because there might be, nobody seems like use this one. So even if there is one single X, there could be like international sites is a classic example. They have the way they maintain the HTML tables, the way they look is by doing something called space.gif. It's like a clear GIF, 1 byte, and many times they put it in the wrong place. The page looks normal, but Keynote claims the page to be not available. So when we started this process of checking for the content to see whether the content is that we expect the users to see, whether is that what they're seeing, we look at we're always reporting the problems with our monitoring tools. we are confirming what Keynote third-party tool is doing. So we went and looked at it, and then we saw this is how they do maintain the tables, and the page is looking normal, but the GIF is not there. So the monitoring tools are reporting correctly. And this went on for a few weeks. Then we asked the international guys to get their act right and put it in the proper directories, the space. So they did that, and not only that, they went ahead and they developed a content validation tool. As soon as they prop the new content every night, they go and check whether those GIFs are there or not. So sometimes we see on our tools content errors, but that happens only for a few minutes. Let's see if I can access this. Obviously, PowerPoint is not installed in this yet. That's one of the services we provide is the monitoring services. Another one is for the properties whenever there are SQL problems. We are like SQL experts with a data warehousing background and database background. We provide debugging experience, like we are like tier 3 whenever there is a SQL problem. We try to figure it out, and most times it happens to be in the code. Otherwise, we go and escalate to the, sometimes we find the problem with the SQL itself, so we go and escalate to SQL Server team. And another interesting thing that we face the problems with product groups, like particularly Windows 2000 screwed us big time in the last 6 months. We have this perf counters because we're monitoring. We collect lots of data using the performance counters, PMC files. So they decided instead of saying percentage CPU utilization or percentage processor time in Windows, that's the way it used to be in Windows NT. They decided they wanted to call it processor percentage time. They never understood what they're doing to the operations groups around the world who are using these perf counters. Because now the same automated way doesn't work because it can't find percentage processor time. Now it's processor percentage time. So we have to redo all the PMC files. It's a simple thing, and somebody might not have liked the way it is named. Fine, but they never understood what they're doing to the ops groups. It's okay in doing in a shrink-wrapped product, but not in an ops world.
They were assuming that it was always a person.
Yes. So they always assumed it's basically, even if it is a person, they thought it's never used in mission critical systems. All right. So people, my first reaction is, okay, we won't upgrade to Windows 2000. Then being a good corporate citizen, okay, let's take the pain and take the hit. But taking the hit is really painful because some of the things we really want to automate the process. Now we have to do some other things manually because we do logical grouping. So we could have, say we combine like SQL servers, all of them for passport, and we apply the same set of tests. So now we can't apply the same set of tests because some of them are Windows 2000 and some of them are Windows NT. So we have to do some other stuff manually to maintain because our automated tools don't work anymore. Those are the things we try to send it back to the product groups, and then they say, oh, well, it's just one small change, what's the problem to change? It's like the small changes, they add up and then they add lots of work to operations. What else? Then we also have link checking tools apart from collecting the data and doing the data analysis. These mostly we compare ourselves with competitions, like front page of eShop, which is one of our shopping websites. We compare with AOL Shop, Yahoo Shop, and then we see how we are performing. It's only front page, not the whole site. But the idea is mostly people come to the front page, and if it sucks, then people don't go further down. So that's the majority of the case. So what we want to see how it's performing, like whether it has the same. We want to have 0% content errors. So that means we want the page to be available all the time, and we want the page to be delivered much faster than our competitors. Most times we lose. We do well on chat, we do well on search, we do okay on MSN.com. Not actually okay, we lose MSN.com, but most sites we generally lose with our competitors. So we take 3 seconds, they might take 2.5 seconds. So what we do is we go every week, we have something called war meeting. So I need to tell about this war meeting. The way we work in ops is it's very similar to any big operations group. They go to the war meeting, they see in the last 24 hours what went wrong, if anything went wrong. If it has gone wrong, why it went wrong. and then we set up processes to make sure that it won't happen again. That's a typical of any ops groups in banks and all that they do. So that we do.
Those happen every day?
Every day morning. It takes 15 minutes to half an hour. And in the last 6 months after Rick and Rex came, we got new management. What we implemented is every week we'll do beyond reactive phase. We want to do every day, but for the timing we are doing every Thursday. So we spend extra half an hour to find out, for example, go through what are the things we are doing for networking, like to see how we are improving the networking bandwidth, if that's what the problem is. What we are doing to move from Canyon Park, because Canyon Park is a data center where we are running out of space. So we want to move to other data centers. One thing is it gives us the redundancy, fallback, in case if things get screwed up here, we can move on to other data centers. And there is a growth. Canyon Park is behind, like ITG is behind than what the internet growth is. F5 doesn't work. Okay, this works. We'll come back to the other ones. So we develop the monitoring infrastructure. We'll walk through that and I'll come back. We provide monitoring services. Whatever I talked, it is here already. So we provide tier 3 support for monitoring infrastructure. So we have data centers in Canyon Park, UK and Japan. So we provide all the monitoring infrastructure from this one group. And we provide the debugging services for SQL. We consult quite often. We get from MSN Internet Access, CarPoint, Expedia, saying how to set up their operation setup. So we help them in setting it up. Then we evaluate third-party tools. It's mainly, if you see, most of the tools that we use for monitoring is third-party tools, not Microsoft. Because I used to be in the data warehouse group in IDSS. It is the same argument. Like Microsoft focuses on 80% of the market, which makes sense. The 20%, which is really large market, our tools do not scale up. So for example, site server, they have a data warehousing company. We spent $20 million buying a company called Usage Analyst. But what they do is small website, 10 servers. They can't really scale, whereas we have like 100 gigabytes worth of data we process for IIS logs across all our websites. They really don't scale, so we had to go and design our own system or go with the third-party tools. And at that time, we found there are no third-party tools that can scale up to, so we had to go and develop our own. It's the same case even with monitoring. Site server has a monitoring component, but it doesn't meet our scalability, and it doesn't really do a good job on that.
Okay.
So,
are we at any performance disadvantage because we use Windows instead of Linux?
No, that's not it. That's not true at all, because all these tools are being run on Windows NT. Okay, it's just a question of the design and the right use of the thing. So I'll show you some of the examples, which are very interesting, because lots of times in the last 6 months we found we go back to the developers and then they say, oh, it's NT problem, it's a SQL problem, and then we drill down. Actually, we are beating them in that database or what NT is doing or what ASP is doing, and then we find programmer made a stupid mistake of redirecting it 10 different times. So it's mostly, it ends up as a programmer, it's a programming problem. It's common sense more than the hardware or the platform for that matter. So some of the interesting stats, I just put it on the top so that we will know what we are doing. We manage about 1,000 servers. We call monitored objects because we have IP addresses, we have virtual IP addresses, we have like about 1,000 URLs we monitor. We have lots of URLs, but we monitor only about 1,000 of them. Then we group this logical grouping I was referring earlier. The main reason we did this we did in the last 6 months. Earlier, we used to run one test on search server, web server, and we used to run a different test, or the same test but with the different parameters. That's because there was no automated way of doing it. So what used to happen is, it used to work, this web server was working fine, and this web server says, I'm not working fine because thresholds are different, or the parameters are different. So it used to be headache for SEs. Then we said, no, we'll combine all web servers, we'll logically group them, and apply the same test with the same parameters, same thresholds. So when there is a problem, if the test fails, it would fail across. I mean, they're taking out that inconsistency. So they know when there is a problem on that web server. It's not because the monitoring is set up wrongly. So we decided to logically group them. So we grouped all these into 308. So we don't group search servers with MSN servers. In search, we combine SQL servers into one, SMTP servers into one, then web servers into one logical grouping, and sometimes more than one logical grouping, because if they want to apply different thresholds, then we say you apply at the group level, not with individual monitored objects within it. And also we don't combine servers with URLs, because some tests you can run only on URL, you can't run on the server. Same, it's vice versa. So we don't combine different monitored objects into the same group. We have about 7,000 tests we run every 2 minutes. That works out to be about 5 million tests we run every day. This is the data that we are manufacturing. This is not like users hitting. This is like we kept on hitting our own servers and our own site. In a way, we are manufacturing about 5 gigabytes worth of data, and we are monitoring this in real time. So every 2 minutes we publish it on a website called SockWatch. We will be redesigning it, but this is SockWatch is done about a year and a half ago, and we haven't changed much. Then our infrastructure application level is we have this site scope third-party tools I was talking to, because mostly we use the third-party tools. We have 6 monitoring servers. Each one is a hard backup to another one. So if one server goes down, and which we do quite often, we take we have the building where we are working, we have a lab called Saturn Lab where we have 2 more servers there. What we do is to make sure the hard backup is working, we just go and we power it down. We not even software shutdown. We just go and pull the plug on it, and then we want to see whether it's the other one picks it up. It picks up within 2 minutes. 2 minutes is the worst case scenario, and 1 second is the best case scenario. We don't do that in Canyon Park, but we know that it works, so we just don't do that on a regular basis in Canyon Park. But if the server goes down, there is a hard backup. What that means is, suppose if a server is running 500 monitors, 500 tests every 2 seconds, that means it's every 2 minutes. It's collecting lots of data. Now suddenly you load it up with another 500 monitors, so you doubled the volume. So CPU utilization might go from 40% to 80%, which is not really good, because if another server goes down, another monitoring server goes down, which would be bad. So what we have is we have a standby server, which is a manual process where we move this 500 tests into the new box and we make it a hard backup, and we work on the backup server now. Why it failed? But generally, there is a scenario where 3 monitoring servers can go down, and our monitoring will be monitoring, but we won't be able to monitor that efficiently. But it never happened. I mean, we are just counting on that probability. But we don't have, just because we have 6 monitoring servers, we don't have another 6 servers backing them up. So they back up each one of them.
Is that decision just a cost basis?
Cost. It's not only the cost. It's not only the cost. Whenever you add in operations, to keep in mind, if you add another box, if you always adding on hardware is the solution, you are causing operational nightmare. So you have more points of data failure. So then we have to maintain the same bits in all the places. So we are always careful, like we encourage our properties, our sites, not to come up with a solution where adding hardware is always going to solve the problem. Ads is the typical scenario. When we started 2 years ago, ads used to have 13 or 14 servers. Today we have 130 servers. Volumes didn't go up 10 times, but the architecture sucks. So that's why it's always like you're adding hardware. That means we are always increasing the operational nightmare, and we add more number of people to solve those problems. But they are redesigning their architecture in ads 5.0, hopefully, which will fix the problems. And this is a simple scheme monitoring diagram. It's not exact representation, because we did this so that we'll get an idea. We have the servers. This is a cloud in the Canyon Park, and then we have a SIM server. This is a hardware diagnostics. Like if it is a compact servers, compact installs an agent called SIM agent, which is checking for the hardware. When there is a failure, the events go to a place called SIM server, and that's the place where you set up, and then it comes to our database. Then we have these monitoring. Then we have the monitor servers, about 6 of them, and we'll be adding more. This is the one these are the servers which are continuously testing every 2 minutes and loading the data into the database. And also we have servers, which I'll explain in a few minutes. We have a couple of servers in our lab, which we wanted to be in Canyon Park, outside Canyon Park. So if you look at the architecture in Canyon Park, we have LANs, then there is a bunch of routers, what they call secure routers or distribution routers, and then there are switches on top of them, and then there is a border routers, what they call. So if I was monitoring just servers, so if you look at that, there are 4 layers before actually it goes to the backbone, UUNet or Sprint or CNW. So I could say server is fine, my server is healthy, I'm looking at the pop counters, everything is healthy, but one of these routers might be bad. We have 2 switches, one of the switches might be down, and we are host. We could be looking at the server, everything is looking good, but the end user can't see anything, period. So what Rex Smith, when he came, this is the one he brought up this, the first thing when he looked at our architecture, and he said, this sucks, I don't give a shit if your server is up or down. He says, end user, if he cannot see, if you are not throwing the bits out of your border router, you can say your data center is healthy. I don't believe it is healthy anymore. So what we did is, the first thing, we put up monitoring servers at the border router level. So we're asking LAN to be built, but we didn't build. So what we did is, the next best thing, we put the monitoring servers in the Red West campus, and then we keep hitting this as the end user is sitting in Red West campus and hitting these websites. So we monitor from outside the border routers. That's a goal. So his goal is 2 seconds. Every page should be delivered in less than 2 seconds at the border router. After that, if end user is taking 30 seconds to see that page, the problem is with the backbone. He says, that's my problem. You guys at least make sure the data center is good. So Rick and Rex are working on taking away the network equipment management from ITG, so that, let's say if UUNet is down, we can't really switch from UUNet to Sprint today efficiently. We have to call ITG, and it takes 3 hours, by then UUNet is back up. Or we see UUNet is taking 45 seconds, whereas Sprint is taking 13 seconds. We want to use the egress equipment to immediately switch. That's what they do in Hotmail. So Rex brought lots of ideas from Hotmail. So what they're doing is, they're trying to take away the networking equipment, and I think that's agreed upon, and they will get it soon. So at that time, what we do is, you will see it further down. We also monitor we buy data from a third party at the end user, and we monitor that with a 20-minute gap. So we see if UUNet to Boston, if it is slow, then Sprint, then we would switch to Sprint. We'll have that ability. We have the data. We just don't have the equipment to do that. We know how to do that. So this, what we call DTAC, is at the border router. So we have a couple of monitoring servers at the border router. That also puts into the same database. Then it goes to the stager, which I didn't point here. Then it goes to a bunch of UI we have. One of them is the SOC Watch, which is where it is a real-time monitoring. And then we have a data analysis one, which we call CG Ops Metrics. And then we have SOC Admin, which is like a repository of asset information and monitoring these tests, which is automated way of delivering. That's the admin UI does that. And then we have the ticketing for our tier 1 and tier 2, like when they cut a ticket, there is a process flow that they go through. So we do monitoring at the hardware level, which is SIM and Dell. We do at the system software level. We make sure that services are up and running. For example, IIS service is running, NT services are running. So, and we do at the application software level. And we have internal tools: SOC Admin, ticketing. Vision 7 is a SQL administration tool. Then Bedrock, which is a link checker across the whole site. Then we have third-party tools like SiteScope, which is the main tool for application level monitoring. We have Sentry, it's an event collection stream. This is another thing I need to spend a couple of minutes. So the SiteScope is monitoring the data and getting the data into the database, whether it is success or failure, it doesn't matter. It loads it into the database. That's what they're seeing in real time. So if there is a failure, they can see it in real time, but they're not taking any action. What we also do is, we also tell the SiteScope tool, if it crosses this threshold, for example, disk space on D drive, if it falls below 100 megabytes, say go ahead and drop event into NT event log. Then as soon as it's dropped into the NT event log, there are Sentry agents are sitting on all these web server. Every server that is installed in Canyon Park is part of the ITG build, and it's going to be part of MSN operations build. What it does is it takes those events and pushes it into a gatherer called Sentry Gatherer. It knows where it needs to push it. You can configure that, and then from there we'll pick it up from the database and we drop it into the alarm console. That's where the tier 1 is looking at. If you ever go to Red West building, you see these big screens in operations center. That's what they're looking at, and then they try to solve the problem. Let's say in the example I'm giving, disk space went down from 100 megabytes to 90 megabytes. Troubleshooting ID says call SE. So by the time SE calls, SE might respond back in 30 minutes or so. He's doing something. He's trying to figure it out. So for those 30 minutes, we don't keep bombarding the alarm console with the same problem. We suppress further down. So we say it's the same problem. The ticket is already cut. We don't bother them anymore for that problem. If there is another problem from the same server, we still go and alert them. Now this time F disk or maybe CPU utilization went up to 90%. So that's what we use Sentry for. SIM we already talked about. Dell Open Manager is same as SIM. It's basically a stripped down version of HP Open Manager. This is mainly works for the Dell servers. And Keynote is a third-party tool we buy the data from. It's a third-party company. We buy the data for the end-user experience. Basically what they have is they have agents sitting on all these famous backbones across the whole US, actually across the whole world. And they have major agreements with the ISPs, most of the big ISPs, where they set up these agents and then they monitor the URLs you tell them to monitor. They charge us a lot of money for that, for monitoring, and you can tell the frequency. Operational reporting. So all this data is fine. So we want to report it and we want proactively to analyze. So these are the tools we have, and we'll be developing more of it. Basically, we'll be CG Ops metrics will be increasing more and more subject areas to see in a different dimension, different data. Like for example, we have performance data. We want to include perf counters data. We want to include asset information. We want to include costing. We want to include ticketing information. So the idea is basically it's like a digital dashboard for the management to understand what their properties are doing, how much it is costing them to run, and how badly we do. So this is the CG Ops metrics is the data warehouse also. Hardware level, I already talked about SIM and Dell Open Manager. System software level, we do lots of tests, ping tests, service tests, like Vision 7 to make sure the database is running. Then application software level, we do disk space, CPU utilization. We do like about 100 different types of tests. We do lots of tests, but those are the instances of the tests. But the classes itself, there are different classes. I didn't list all of them. So the process, what I explained earlier. So we've done monitoring at the data center, that is within the data center. We do it at the border router, and we do it at the end user. And monitoring data we collect and store it in a database for analysis. And events are dropped into NT event log, and we collect and send to the alarm console. And then we cut a ticket, and we try to solve most of the problems at tier 1. Our goal is to go to 85%, but we are close to it already. So SOC admin, this is the place where we have all the asset information. We have the information about all our monitoring objects, all types of tests we do it. And the site scope, our monitoring tool expects a configuration file. It is generated from here. It's not manual anymore, except for this Windows 2000, what they did to us. But most of them are automated. And then ticketing is the system. Basically, just it goes through the tier 1, tries to solve the problem, then they assign to tier 2, and then tier 2 resolves the problem, assigns it back to the tier 1. If they cannot, they'll escalate further down to some other team. Like for example, it might be search. One of the search servers might have given a problem because of content error, but that might be because of an ad that appeared on the search. So SOC doesn't know that. They would assign it to search. Search says, okay, it's not my problem, it's an ads problem, so they assign it to ads. And Bedrock is a link checking tool. Vision 7 is a database administration and monitoring tool. These are all internal tools. Then we have third-party tools: Sitescope, Sentry, SIM, Dell Open Manager, Keynote. If you see most of the previous page, those are the tools we built around these. Those are like more like infrastructure. The tools that we use are mostly non-Microsoft, just because of the scalability. Then we have operational reporting, SOC watch, SOC ticketing, CG ops metrics. So CG ops metrics is, as I said, related to performance and availability, and we can compare our sites against our competitors and see where we are failing. I'll walk through one of the examples. Then we can see over time. We have data for March 13th or March 19th, I think we have the data, and we'll be having the data at hourly level for about 6 months, daily, weekly, and monthly for 3 years. Challenges we see are like most of the tools that we use, whether it is Microsoft or non-Microsoft, they put a lot of code on the server side. Only one of the tools which we use doesn't do the site scope, but every tool puts a code on the web server or on the SQL server, like for example Sentry agent. Personally, I hate that, and we see because of the development background. So what they do is, as a developer, I have a clean box and I test it and I think everything is working fine, and I release it to operations, and we put it on the production, and then things fail because we don't have exactly the same environment as the production replicated in each of the test labs. Mainly because it's very tough to, logistics are very difficult, like because ops people might go and upgrade Sentry agent, they might not be able to inform every test lab in the Red West campus. It would be, the ideal scenario would be, don't have any server side code sitting there except what the developers want for that property. We shouldn't be going and putting from ops standpoint, from monitoring, we shouldn't be putting the tools. So like Sentry, for example, there is an easy way to go, not to put agents sitting on all these web servers. There is a way you can pull instead of push mentality. Maybe there are some advantages for pushing, but it's going to reduce the developer's headache with a pull model. So that's basically server-side code. That's one of the first things we evaluate when we are going with any third-party tools or any Microsoft party tools. How big is the blueprint on the server side? Then content management. MSN.com, MSNBC, these people have lots of feeds from third-party newspaper or entertainment and stuff like that. So content management is a major challenge right now. So we prop using content replication services sites server, which is error prone, and the project might fail. They go by projects. And so I have 40 servers, I'm trying to prop onto all 40 servers the same content. It fails on 5 of them. So out of 40 users, 5 users are seeing the content that is old, that might be 3 days old. So content management is a major challenge in the website. So we are trying to move away from a software solution to a hardware solution. We are exploring right now. Then job server is another major challenge we face. So like we schedule lots of jobs to move data from one place to another, or to take backups, or if it's the SQL jobs. So we use lots of different scheduling mechanisms like SQL agent, we use entry batch, we use MSN dash, we have different tools. So we want to go into one environment where monitoring is going to be easier, and jobs are going to be uniform to maintain and manage. Backup and restore. Another problem is like it's like we use Vertas and Legato. We would prefer to use Vertas because we have corporate license and easy to use, great, and all that stuff. But they don't open up some of the APIs we want. They don't open up like command line interface for us. And one of the SQL administrative tools we use for backup needs that. So Legato provides that, Vertas doesn't provide. So we prefer to go with one backup solution. It's not anything Microsoft can help, but it's something when we evaluate the tools, we want to make sure that it would work with the backup software that we have. And architecture. This is Rick's actually favorite story. Or at least a solution he wants to come up with that, but he cannot come up with until we have a unified architecture. April 18th or 22nd, I don't remember, eShop site broke. That's because MSN.com, there is something called NIP. They put a bikini, they promoted eShop showing bikini. So everybody clicked on it because it's a bikini. So eShop site, instead of coming from 5 million page views, that day it got about 75 million page views. So basically everybody is getting, instead of 3-second response, they were getting 45-second response. And there is no mechanism to take out the promotion from MSN.com. They never informed eShop system engineers or the program managers saying they're going to promote your site with a bikini on it. So at least they would have known. So the OPM comes and says, okay, my parents would be proud because now I'm running a porno site, and the site went down. It's bad because he wasn't informed and the whole site went down. So our point is, even if they informed, he wouldn't have been able to do anything, unfortunately. Only thing is you would have told them not to promote, or otherwise have the ability to, in case as soon as the volumes went up, that take out the promotion. There was no mechanism. At least she could have done that. At least she would have been warned. He wasn't even warned. The solution we want to come up with is have a set of servers, have a group of servers to serve this promoted site. But they can't really do that, even if they have a couple of clusters, 50 servers sitting to whenever, like one day they might be promoting eShop, the second day they might be promoting CarPoint, another day Expedia. The ability to use these 50 servers to this new piece of code is not possible because they don't have the same architecture. It's like they have to go through a week process to set up. And you really don't get a week advance for promotions because it depends upon the day what is going on. I mean, you can't really promote. It's based on, it's really mostly reactive. Like on what happened yesterday, they might promote something else today. And the promotion is not going well, then they might go with another promotion. So they cannot really do that until they have unified architecture across all these sites. So that's a challenge that we have. So we are doing some things. This is basically marketing. It's not meant for you guys, what we are planning to do. We are planning to do asset management much better, software asset management. Software asset management might be interesting for you guys. Is like if you go to chat servers, we have to roll back twice, chat servers. The main reason is these web servers, like they have like 12 web servers or so. Each server has got different configuration, how the web settings are done. So web guys, the chat guys, they really thoroughly test it, but they test it on one web server and they assume they'll have the same settings across all the servers, which is a logical assumption because it's operations job to make sure that they're all with the same print. That's what we guarantee, but that's not what we are doing. So, but we don't have any tool to enforce that. So what we want to do is we want to take for each site a master configuration, and then every day we'll go and pick up the registry settings, metabase, everything. We compare with this master configuration. If there is a different even for one server, we would cut a ticket and assign it to those system engineers. Then they will have two options: either change the master configuration to meet what is there on that server if that is valid, or otherwise go and change the server settings to comply with the master settings. Ticketing 3.0, we want to automate more. Ticketing is already well automated, but we want to, like when a server is purchased, we want to prop automatically instead of doing it manually. And then management wants to understand the cost of operations. Today they have no clue whatsoever except on what they spent last year. But they can't really tell how much it is costing for each property. So is it worth spending say $10 million on eShop if we are never going to make profit on top of it? So those are the types of things COGS will help. And network monitoring, once we have the networking equipment, we'll be integrating network monitoring data with our data center data. Then we are planning to develop an extranet site. This is mainly meant for not to promote this. It's mainly we are signing up with deals with the third-party companies like Nextel, Compaq, Radio Shack. So we need to provide them. We sign a service level agreement saying 98.5% availability. Your page download time is going to be less than so many seconds. And there is a dollar amount attached to it. So we need to prove that what we are signing is what we are giving them, and we want to publish this data instead of email and all that. So we are developing an extranet site. That's it. Any questions on this? Then I'll take you guys to some of the tools that we have, not all of them.
How many tickets per day do you got?
About 300 tickets.
Can you give me a rough breakdown of what kinds of categories you might fall into?
Yeah, mostly it is all the tickets. When we say we cut 300 tickets, only 50 of them, I don't know the exact number, is the real problems. The other 250 might be potential problems. Potential problems because the disk space. Generally, when we set the thresholds, we say if database is, let's say if the database is 10 gig, as soon as the database is growing to 7 gig or so, as the database is full, initially we might allot 10 gig. As soon as it takes up 7 gig, what we do is we alert. We don't wait until 95%. Okay, so at 70%, so SOC still goes ahead and cuts the ticket. They won't wake up system engineers because the troubleshooting guide says if it is a database growth, that's crosses 70%, don't wake me up. But if it grows 90% that night itself, then they will wake him up. So they will have a couple of thresholds. At 70%, they won't wake up. The next day morning, at least, system engineer has an opportunity to go and find out why it went up. Okay, if it is normal this thing, maybe then he can go back and reevaluate his capacity planning model, and he might increase the database size from 10 gig to 20 gig. So those are the potential. The most of the problems are like the potential ones. The ones which causes related to the networking. So what happens is we cut a ticket, everything that comes in, and then we find it's like the page is not available, the page timed out. It's not like the page is not there, it might be a timeout. So if it's a 404, then obviously they're going to do it, but if it's like 502 or 504, any of the server timeouts, then when they don't wake up system engineer first, they go and verify whether the alarm is valid or not. So by the time they go there, after 2 minutes, if the page is there, then they don't wake up. So those are, some of them are related to the networking. The other ones are genuine, maybe hardware failure, or the disk space become full because something went haywire in the code, which went on taking up the space, or somebody wasn't cleaning up the temp files, so it might have taken up the disk space. We hardly got ever saying like CPU utilization went up beyond 90%. They do capacity planning that pretty good. So generally when it crosses 60%, they get worried about it.
So how many people do you have working on this every day? What do they spend most of the time doing?
Okay, now we have 4 groups in shared technologies group. The whole Rex Smith organization, Rick might be able to tell better. We have like tier 1, bunch of SOC watchstanders. It's like they work in shifts. It's 24/7, 365 days. So they work in shifts. The number is I think about 30 people or so there. Then we have a tier 2, which is like operations program managers and system engineers. That's I don't know the exact number. It might be 50 or so. Stephen Gary heads that whole group. It's based on the property. So each property might have like 2 or 3 system engineers. If it is a big property, they might have 3. Some properties will have only 1. Then Rick Waddell's group, that's the one where I am part of. Then hardware procurement, hosting, analysis, security, then what we call a tier 3 program management. That's the one if there is a problem with NT server or SQL server, we don't want system engineers to go on contact. Let's say they find a problem when they upgraded from Windows NT to Windows 2000. They couldn't figure it out, and the developers couldn't figure it out, the system engineers couldn't figure it out. So we don't want everybody to call up PSS, because the same problem might be there for MSN, so we do want to acquire that knowledge. So that's a tier 3 group, belongs to Rick's team. And we have a networking group, which is common for both Hotmail and MSN here, which is owned by Mike Myers. He lives in Hotmail, but he comes every 2 weeks, or every week for 2 days. So he does spend quite a bit of time. So that's what basically we have. Within shared technologies group, I'm not sure whether your question is meant for this, but I'll go ahead and address the whole ops setup. We have multiple databases and monitoring. We keep getting about 10 requests to change monitoring, mainly to change the thresholds or to add some server or to take away some server. So that we have 3 people there. And then we have 4 developers to develop the infrastructure and to develop the data warehouse. We have 2 testers, and we have 2 program managers. One program manager works mainly on the operation side, and one program manager works with developers and testers.
Can you give us just a little bit of information about how you're accessing the SQL server? Are you using just ASPs, etc.? And with respect to the monitoring, what type of technologies are you using? Are you using something like COM components to monitor the scripts? Or can you give us just a little bit more info about the technologies used to like that?
See, so the monitoring is done with Sitescope that I'm encouraging them to move to C#, but they use today Java, server-side Java. It's not on the web server, but they have their own server. That's mainly because they're cross-platform. They're big Unix shop also. Once the data is in the database, we use ASP and the stored procedures to do that. Mainly because we don't have performance problems as such to access the data from the database, because it's a data warehouse. It's already aggregated, and it's not like 1,000 users are hitting at the same time. At most, what we have is about 70 users, and our ticketing database is about per month we get about 6,000 to 10,000 tickets. I said 300 tickets per day. So that also, the database is less than about half a gig. So half a gig databases are not a problem. Mainly, the big one is the data warehouse. So we get about 5 gigs data per day, but by the time we aggregate, it's only about 100 megabytes. So we aggregate into different levels with different views. So 100 megabytes per day is also not a major problem. So we didn't have to go and develop a sophisticated middleware. So we just use IIS connection pooling. We didn't have to go and reinvent the wheel or improve on that. It's mainly because we don't have like thousands of users at the same time.
And when the users connect to our website, are you using also the same technology to give them information about data, etc.? When I'm a user, I come and hit one of them MSN websites, and it's going to hit the database. Are you also using the ASP or? Mostly
it won't hit the database.
It won't.
Mostly it won't.
Most of the information is static.
It's a dynamic information, but it's like if you take search, for example, I mean, they index to the depth, but they don't use it in the database. They have their own proprietary technology doing the search servers. If you take eShop, it goes against the database, but not for the most of the pages. So it's like only when the page changes, right, or based on the user, what user is looking for. So if you go to eShop default page, you would get mostly it changes every couple of hours or so, but it doesn't change that often. It doesn't change based on the user. Okay, but if you search for a particular product, then it goes to a database, but mostly it is cached. Okay, because they have like 2 gig servers or 4 gig SQL servers. Most of the product catalog will be already in the memory. If you go to MSN.com, there is no database behind, because all the content is popped dynamically.
Do you operate Passport?
Yes, we operate Passport.
Passport is one of the, if you look at the list of NGWS services, it's all Passport is always up at the top.
Yes.
So do you expect it to be operating more of the NGWS services as they move to existence as part of MSN, or?
He can answer. Is it like with the .NET, whether MSN Ops is going to be playing bigger role? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Like because we have Passport and UPS more than anything else.
MSN will be the Microsoft.NET engine. There's no question in my mind. There is studies going on right now. You guys may be more aware of some of those studies than I am.
That's not possible.
At the same time, the infrastructure that we have built around the technologies that we have built and where Microsoft.NET is going, it's very clear to me, while a 100% firm decision hasn't been made yet between the Windows group as well as the Microsoft or MSN group, the engine for Microsoft.NET will be MSN.
Let me ask another .NET related question. I've read somewhere that you guys use that MSN operations uses XML a fair amount internally for like descriptions of objects of things to buy in these shops that you could get direct comparison shopping and so on. What kinds of tools do you use with XML? Are there any great outside tools or that you use, or anything to put together by hand?
To my knowledge, and Ramesh might be able to answer this better than me, but to my knowledge, there aren't a lot of great outside tools. We're probably using the best one, Insight Scope. And as he indicated, it's built on server-side Java because it's cross-platform. I would love to see more tools built on XML because NGWS will be driven by XML and in all of its components. And I think that you will see those tools come to pass, whether they're developed internally or by third parties, which we then incorporate.
And here's another question. This is just, we sort of argue back and forth as to how people like you guys must do these things, so I think I might as well ask you instead of just guessing. When you develop new code that has to run on MSN, how do you go about deploying it? Do you just sort of hit the ship it button? Do you do careful multi-week kind of testing? Do you what?
Yeah. So what this is in you asked me this morning, right? About the load.
Sometimes I wonder about the answer to that question myself, so I'll be glad to hear what Ramesh has to say.
Most times there are always exceptions, but we are more and more forcing in the last 6 months, and this is going to be the trend in the future. What we do is MSN.com says we got this best code now and it solves the world problems. Go ahead and put it in production. We say no. So give us the numbers. Give us what is your test lab numbers, and you tell us what it does to the operations. Tell us what is the plan for does it screw up? How, like you solve the world problems means basically it screws up in some other ways. So we go back and ask for the numbers, performance numbers. Let's say if the earlier one is delivering in 3 seconds, and now the next one takes up 2.5 seconds. But if I have to add 500 servers because the architecture is screwed up, then they say no way. But if it is operational nightmare, they say no way. And one other thing is we don't even believe that number. Okay, so we don't want to believe that number. So we have a operations lab in the same building. So we want to the idea is, most sites we already do that, is like we simulate user environment in that lab, and we get the performance numbers, and then we compare with the test lab performance numbers. They always do not match because as I said, we have a lot more services running on the web server which they won't be running in the test lab. Like when Passport does the test, they test in pure SQL environment, their authentication. So authentication might take only 1.2 seconds, but whereas we might take 1.5 seconds because we have other services running on those servers when we put it in production. So that's one of the reasons we are saying don't put anything on server side to these monitoring tools, so that when we are comparing with test lab numbers with our operations lab numbers, they should be comparable. There shouldn't be about 20% difference the way it is.
What happens if you have catastrophic problems? How often do you have just catastrophic problems that require people to go in and generate new code very fast?
It used to be, but not anymore. So not only before even catastrophic, it's like single point of failure. We hardly have any more single point of failures. Communities is one other one still has a problem, single point of failure. It's like today you can take, you can go to search, they have like 30 servers or 36 servers. You can take away 10 servers. Maybe the response will go down from 1 second to 1.1 second, but not worse than that. So the architecture is in such that you can take away a cluster of 6 to 8 servers for upgrade. End user performance is not going to be impacted. I'm not saying if you out of 40 you take away 30, it's going to be the same. I mean, probably the site might come down, but for regular maintenance purposes. But we don't prop code where it's going to crash. Okay, so if that's because there is a lot more testing, a lot more service mentality. It's not like anymore we're going to send another fix, because in this case when we put on a living breathing systems, end users are getting impacted, and you screw up once and they're not going to come back again. So that's we learned that lesson over the last 3 years.
So the whole point of basically my group that I run for MSN is to identify the guidelines and the standards and the best practices that we have that are cost efficient with high performance and scalability as our needs. Being down, not having the service available in any form is unacceptable. So you factor that in right away. Then you start looking at ways, okay, if if having a property out of business is not acceptable, what do you do to make sure that it is always up? Always able to give something back to the consumer in some form or fashion. It may be in a reduced fashion because of cost measures, but what keeps you being able to service the consumer? Ramesh talked about single points of failure, eliminating single points of failure. We've done that within the data center, within the Canyon Park data center, because we have multiple clusters and we can load balance between different clusters. But what happens if the data center goes out? Are we down? In today's environment, the answer is yes, in some cases. If some 747 takes out a Payne Field and just happens to bury itself into the Canyon Park data center, we're toast. We have other data centers. We've got other data centers around the world. We got one in Japan, we've got one in the UK, we've got one that we're starting in Tequila, we've got the huge Hotmail center down in San Jose. We have to figure out ways that we can replicate data around in those environments in an expedient manner, and we can have machines in those environments that if the Canyon Park data center goes out, there's no effect at all on the consumer.
Except for 10 or 20 seconds later.
Whatever the round trip may be, because based on the
Reasonable time
pattern you're taking now. Right. Right. So that is the whole purpose of what we do within Ramesh's group and ultimately within my overall group to try and solve these problems.
If you go back to the finish up the deployment, so now you run things on your machines, the numbers say 20% off, now what?
So it's basically, it goes back, I mean, operations try to push back saying performance is bad, right? So MSN.com, we had to deploy the new code even though it is slower, because sometimes, because maybe the site is better, site's user experience might be better. In this case, we didn't agree, but might be the case. And a VP gets involved and says, go ahead and put it.
So then how do you put it?
So the rollout, what we do is we go in phased manner. We go cluster by cluster. We upgrade on one cluster and we see that end user experience is fine, and then we go to the next cluster. So we do it in a phased manner over a couple of days to all the clusters. We don't go and just do a big bang on all the clusters at the same time, because we don't want to take too many clusters down at the same time. So we want to take at most only one cluster at any point of time for upgrades. Even when we are going from Windows NT to Windows 2000, we're constantly upgrading from Windows NT to Windows 2000. People don't feel it because we are upgrading by cluster by cluster.
So how often do you have to do extra monitoring as you're rolling out on these clusters?
No, it's the same monitoring. Only thing is, SCs, what they do is on that cluster, they start the perf counters just to see how that CPU utilization suddenly didn't go from 30% to 80%. Sure.
You mentioned that different servers often have different configurations, and you were in fact thinking about some kind of tool to track it. So why is it that different servers in the same cluster have different configurations? Is this something that happens over time because you fix something when something breaks on one server and you install something to fix it, or uninstall something? Or
So I can give a partial answer on that, and then I'll let Ramesh give the full answer. Prior to 6 months ago, when we kind of did a revamp of the MSN management structure, we lived in a world where I think somebody said here a minute ago, what happened? Did they just put it together and throw it out there? And the answer at that time was, yeah. Properties, there's 18 of them. They were pretty much product groups within themselves. And anyone in this room that's been here for longer than about a year and a half and understand product groups, they're driven by one and one thing only, and that is finish their product and get it available in the most expedient manner possible. And they don't care about standards. They don't care about, the needs of some other group. Their group is the most important. Their priorities are the most important, and therefore they go and they do the job necessary to expose their code. MSN was no different. So consequently, there were no standards. There was nobody to hold the reins and say you have to do it this way. So all the product groups. I mean, we still got product groups running code on NT351. God only knows what service pack version they're on. And they're all over the map. So when David Cole took over and came over into there from the Windows environment, he started looking at some of these things. He's put staff in place to say, listen, we can't survive like this any longer. And this kind of goes along with the other thing that Ramesh was talking about, and that is understanding the cost of doing a service. We have no idea what it costs. We add 10,000 users to chat. What does that mean? Is that 10 more servers? Is that one server? How much does that cost? What resources do they use? We have no clue. So the overall structure of this thing is all right, without constraining the product groups too much in their initiative and killing off any initiatives that they have, let's get them to work in an environment where we can all cost effectively kind of keep them in a vertical line. And that is, let's get them on standard hardware so that we can service that hardware in a way that's cost effective. Let's start asset tracking that hardware so that we understand what they're adding to it and how many customers they have, and if they're going to add 10,000 customers, we know kind of what the thing is. And so right now, we're moving towards this nice, neat little silo approach here where we have these standards and everything else. But until we finally get there, we're going to have these groups that we're it's taken some time to bring them over into the new brave world that we're in. The good news is that for new properties coming on board, it's an easy thing to do because we can define what the platform should look like. We can define what the monitoring tools should be like and what they have to do to be able to pass on the checklist to be able to put their service or their site into production. So that's why we're all over the map right at the moment. And there truly is. I mean, it does go from NT351 up to Win2K, and the different means of HTML and the way the coding standards that they use is all over the map. And it's just a matter of trying to get them standard.
We don't use, by the way, NT35, MSN IA uses. So I'm glad to say that it's not in MSN. It's in MSN Internet Access. They use NT35 and IA is 3 because the developers are not there anymore. It's a different animal altogether.
Which that again shows another point of a problem that we have in that MSNIA, while within the same Rick Beluso organization, doesn't fall under David Cole and his operational organization. Well, it does. I guess it does. It does fall under David. But MSNIA has their own operations group, and then we have our own operations group, and they haven't come together yet. And I say yet because I believe under the Microsoft.NET environment, as we get to the real way of doing MS.NET, those things will come together. The subscription part of it, the passport part of it for authentication, it will all become under the same kind of an operational environment.
So this is one of the websites. This is the data analysis environment, and we'll be improving it to add more subject areas. So right now it has got performance and availability. So the first page we go, which we talk every day morning, is we call it a SOC report because that's where we go and meet. It's called War Room, and we see what are the problems that happened in the last 24 hours, why it happened, and what we're going to do about it. So we can take a look at, basically when you go, report name, it's basically SOC. Later on, OPMs and SCs, they will be able to group their favorite other pages that they monitor. Like for example, MSN.com guy might not care what is going on with eShops, so he doesn't have to monitor that. You can basically group them together. That's the idea. And the medium is saying how we monitored, whether it is a DTAP or Keynote, which we bought the data from, Portal, which is within the data center. So DTAP is at the border router, and the day. And you can analyze across the days, but that's at a lower level. And then whether it is a GMT, PST, because we monitor and the guys in UK and Japan also. So let's take United States, how we did the graph. So let me turn off legend. So here it's like we go by, as I said, 2 seconds is our target, and if it is about 2 seconds, let me turn off availability. If anything is about 2 seconds, we get worried about that if it crosses the line. Particularly for US ones, international ones, some of them they're hosted from UK, so we don't have the DTAP setup, same monitoring setup there, so we really don't worry about them. But for US, if it crosses 2 seconds, we do worry about that.
The horizontal axis here is time.
I'm sorry.
The horizontal axis here is time there.
This is the download time.
The
So the horizontal is the
Is the properties.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so it's like what I highlighted is the eShop. It's 1.8 second. If you see at the start of 3 months ago, it used to be about 4.6 seconds or so for calculation. By constantly monitoring this and going back to them, it cut down. Same case with channels women. Let's see. Yeah, it is 24 still. It's so this one, channels women always used to be more than 3 seconds. Now it went less than 1 second. That's again, we went back and asked them to change the code, anything about 2 seconds. And the availability, so let me turn off the download. This guy, because 98.5% is our target. So communities is about 99 something. So we can go and take a look at why communities is bad. So it didn't have any content errors, but it had timeouts. Maybe they took down some of servers, so they had timeouts. So we can go and check. Actually, it is still 98. It's not below 98.5. So it happened in the last 2 hours or so. They will be going and taking a look at it why it happened. So it's like between 1 and 2 o'clock, it's 12.5% timeouts. It's mainly because they must have taken some servers. We can go and actually verify that fact in another place. And between 2 and 3, it's 8.3%. So they go and monitor this, and then they go, basically they'll get escalated. Somebody would get a call, and then either they have to give an explanation saying, I'm upgrading the cluster, that's why you're getting, or otherwise some servers went down. Let me go and fix that. So they can actually go and drill down. And they can actually also go and do across many days here, or here. And they can do by hourly, daily, weekly, and monthly at this point. Let me go back. We also check here the main URL that they're going, right? And the page size, you can take a look at it. Generally, if the page size is bigger, it correlates to download time being higher. So channels entertainment is about 100K 1 second, but it's not always the case. But generally, that's one of the things to watch out. And we see last 7 days download time. So we want to see the deviation from today to last 7 days. If it is bad, like in this case, channels local is bad, we want to see why it is going down. I mean, we want it to be flat or better, not go down. Maybe the traffic went up. We don't know that. We are not doing micromanaging at that level, but we do want to do it in the future. It's the same case with search. It is down today from this morning. They're investigating why the search download time went down compared to what it is for last 7 days. Sometimes because we are monitoring from Red-West, maybe the networking is bad from here to that, but then every site would have been bad in that case. But it seems like it's only search problem. They will be investigating that. And the same way content errors, we can go and drill down what happened to Canada, because it got 0.24% content error. And at 6 in the morning, it couldn't, the server couldn't deliver that GIF. That's all it happened. So it's not a major concern. Generally, we alert SEs. Basically, we alert our tier 1 if the same image, if the image is missing 3 times in a row. It doesn't have to be the same image, but for that site, if an image is missing 3 times in a row, we do alert them. And then here is the sample count to see how many samples we took so far from midnight to up to this point. And we aggregate this data every 20 minutes. Now, earlier we asked the questions about whether it's a platform, whether it's the NT or SQL Server issue, because this is what we have been hearing from developers for a long time. I'm a developer, so I'm not just speaking on developers. eShop is one of the perfect examples which we use every day, and we used to go back and ask eShop developers before we didn't have the data, and their gut feeling always wins, which is basically NT or SQL Server sucks, or otherwise our operation sucks, one of those two, or otherwise it's a keynote data. It's never, code is never a problem. So we looked at the download time. We compare with our two main competitors, Yahoo and AOL, most of the time, but it's not all the time. And they used to say we had much better experience with eShop because pages got a lot more images and stuff like that. So we said, okay, let's take a look at the page size. Yahoo Shop, AOL is very small, and so we are taking the next best buy, which is Yahoo, because their download time is a lot less than AOL also, because AOL is only 40K. They take as much time as Yahoo, which is 83K. So Yahoo is doing excellent job. So we want to compare with the next, with the market leader. So we saw we are losing by about 1.4 seconds consistently every day. Okay, so we can look at across multiple days. I mean, you can basically look at the graph and you can see every day we lost. This is across a week. It's not just for one day.
I'm going to have to go back to you guys. So
Yeah, sure, I'll do that. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Do you need a Scott? Do you need a Scott? I mean, he's got a visitor tag.
After Ramesh is done, and be kind to him for the rest of the session, quickly. If you guys have got ideas along the lines of what you guys can do to help us out with some of the requirements that we're going to have, or you want some clearer detail on where we're going in the future and what we might need, drop me a piece, Ramesh or myself, a piece of mail, because we can use all the help that we can get. As you can tell, there's a lot of tools that are required to be able to run a 24/7 operation. And the tools, and what worries me are the tools that will be available in the future that will run on an XML platform like we plan on having, and whether or not we're going to be able to scale with the tools that we have. So if you guys have got ideas on what we can do there, bring them on, because we can use whatever we can do. Ramesh's team is small. They're powerful, but they're small. And I'm sure he would be eager to have any help that he can get. So, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you.
We can actually compare our backbones. We didn't do that. We did across all the backbones, across all the cities. Cities are mainly within the US.
I have a question.
Sure.
It's been a while since I talked to people who run Yahoo, back like 2 or 3 years ago when I did. They said that one of the reasons that they got such great performance out of their site is that they didn't try to do anything dynamic. And they would try to more or less take everything, all the pages that could be generated and just generate them ahead of time, store them statically, always do static retrieval, always have extremely short code paths, whatever. Where, do they still do that? Is that still embedded?
I do not know. I cannot answer intelligently, but what I'm looking at from the user experience, if they, it's the architecture issue, right? For example, if I'm comparing MSN.com with Yahoo, MSN.com goes by, because we have to compare apples to apples. You can't just say MSN.com because it generates the GUID, it might be slower. And most of the monitoring tools, in fact, all the monitoring tools in the market, they always assume that they're not going to accept cookies, and they're going to always start a new browser. It's like as you got a new computer and a new browser. So Yahoo delivers faster because they don't have to generate a GUID to store it in the cookie. MSN.com always generates a GUID, so they spend about 400 milliseconds in generating the GUID. That's a cost they're paying. Okay, they can't just simply say, "Oh, next time his user experience is going to be good," because that's an architecture issue. You have to compare Yahoo with MSN.com, and we're saying if it is a new user, MSN.com loses. So if that is okay, and if your explanation is valid and it's okay with business, then that's fine. So in this case, I'm going by the end user experience, and you can go to Yahoo Shop, you see as many images as eShop. Okay, that's what this is saying. Earlier they used to say Yahoo page size is very small. So how the page is generated is altogether a different architectural issue. But when we are comparing with our competitor, we can't just say because our architecture is bad that it's okay for us to spend more time. No, I'm not saying that you said that.
As, gosh, this would be a good thing.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. So what they can do is they can change the underlying architecture to make the page available and keep on refreshing it every 2 hours or every hour. That's if you want to, instead of doing every at least the start page, instead of doing it dynamically, you can change your architecture to have a static page, whatever they want to do. And we found that it's not ASP, which is delaying the problem.
So, it's a question. To what extent do you have an idea how those times break down? In other words, you're saying from the user
I'm going by that. Okay. So, and most times the answer used to be ASP is bad. That's always the response when we say SQL. ASP is bad, right? So we took a look at the first byte time, which is basically because ASP is thinking before they deliver the first byte. That's what used to be the argument. Actually, if you look at eShop, those 7 days, they had beaten Yahoo. So whatever Yahoo is using, whether it is CGI or the static page, is not true anymore because eShop, being ASP, actually had beaten because by about 40 milliseconds. It's not much, but it's not that we are spending a lot of time on delivering the first byte, which is basically ASP, is what it is doing.
Let me ask one more,
Sure.
seemingly antagonistic question.
No, that's okay. I mean, it's good. We always go through this.
I've heard that Yahoo spends a lot fewer dollars for capital equipment for the same number of users than you do.
Per user, they do spend a lot less. I think they spend about 50 cents less. But it might not be because one thing is we don't have good understanding of our costs. Another thing is what we are finding, it costs more because of ITZ than going and outsourcing it to the stuff, because there's a lot more overhead with ITZ involved than going with Exodus data center. I'm not just saying for the sake of ITZ. I'm just saying if anybody has worked in ITZ before, I'm sorry, but that's okay. Okay. But we do not know. Once we understand operations better, cost of operations, that will be more valuable. But the numbers that came when we used some third-party company to go through that, it's about 50 cents we are more than them.
Out of the total, how much?
It's about $3 per user or something like that per year. I think it's 280 hours and they are like 230 or something like that. I mean, I'm throwing the numbers. I've seen these numbers about 6 months ago when I came to the group.
Ramesh, what tool are you using to break these numbers down to this level of granularity?
It's basically HTTP gives that when it gives the download time, you can it gives in different counters, so you can just pick them up. This is basically we can't monitor Yahoo and AOL. If you monitor from here, anyhow we'll always do it because our servers are here and Yahoo are here. So what we used is across many cities and across many backbones. So we are buying from a third party data. So this is not just we made up to make us look bad or anything like that. So first byte time we are doing well. So that they went okay with it. Then we took the DNS time. Then another argument used to be our DNS servers lookup used to take much longer. That was not the case. Even if it was, in some scenarios, it's always like 30-40 milliseconds. It's not bad. But in eShop example, eShop DNS servers, like eShop has been propped to many DNS servers already, so it wasn't taking any time. Then we looked at content time. This is one of the things. I mean, they could argue rich user experience, but if you can go to Yahoo Shop and eShop and they look similar, I mean the experience is. So content time we are always losing 600 milliseconds because our images, for whatever the reason, they're taking longer. Maybe there are redirections, we don't know. It is taking longer.
So what is content time include, like time to render as well?
Content is basically the image that it took to deliver the images, not the HTML code itself. We can take a look at the HTML code, how long it is taking. That's the index time, what they call. So index time, the HTML code, we are doing okay. I mean, from ASP when it got converted to HTML, we are actually at par with. We're actually beating Yahoo in many places, but we are always better than Yahoo.
Earlier when you comparing the sizes of the pages for MSN, for eShop and for Yahoo, we showed about a 10% difference, and so that would be reflected in the picture.
Yeah. So now, if you The next one, which is actually killing us, which is basically, which is overlooked, the redirection time. We are the only ones who spend redirection. So if I'm testing, if I have a redirection page and if I'm sitting in Red West campus or anywhere in Seattle area on a T1 line, redirection is not going to cost us much time, maybe 30-40 milliseconds. But imagine if you have a client-side redirection and if you're sitting in Boston, because it's like the way redirection works is if you have, like if you can go to MSN.com and hit on any link, it goes to Go server, which are hosted in Canyon Park. The way it works is it's a client-side redirection. I mean, the client gets back the final destination page, and then client has to make one more call. Okay, that's what we suspect is happening with eShop, and they agreed, and then they said they'll fix it in the next version. So they're redesigning it, and hopefully it'll get fixed by August 1st. So that's the plan. But they agreed once we have shown the data where they're spending most of the time. That's where they're spending most of the time, where we lose.
So is that a component of the content time?
I'm sorry?
Is that included in the content time?
No, I don't think it is included in the content time.
So if it's not included, then we're
still bad, but that's at least, we know at least a place where we would still lose, but we won't lose that badly.
Right. But if it's, let's suppose that we're still losing unacceptable after we fix the redirection problem, then how do we diagnose further?
In the content time, what they do is, I think they already know about the number of images that they have a lot more. When they redesign the architecture, they don't want to rely too much on the database. eShop relies a lot more on the database. Even the database is in memory all the time. It's still not as good. So like there is a promotions area where the images are. They always go to the SQL server to get that images.
So this is just sort of folklore that you know?
Huh?
This is just folklore that you know?
Not me, but the OPM, senior OPM that takes care of eShop, he knows all of them. So he goes back and beats them up. Earlier, when I say they always used to win because he never had data. They used to come back to him and say things are perfect. But now once we have the data, then he could go back and he's showing them, and they're being a lot more responsive. But he knows them. He worked with them. They're all from Sidewalk.
So I was going to ask, to what extent would sort of having that data, putting it in front of people when they're designing the pages help in terms of making the pages?
What David Cole has suggested is, when he went through this whole thing, he said, let's do that before we put it in production, in the release to operations, when they give a new version, let's monitor this. So we won't be able to monitor, we won't be able to compare with Yahoo and AOL shopping page, but let's compare our page with the newer page, the newer version, then compare it and see whether it did it. So that would be one of the things that we say release to operations. I mean, you said you would fix this problem, redirection time is still bad, can you go back and take a look at it? So it is going to be...
How hard would it be to write a tool that would actually give them a model of the time it would take? Just given a page, and accurately tell them before they did anything that this one is going to take X amount of time.
Okay, again, it's where it is going to be, like suppose you write the tool, which we have the tool right now, we run it, redirection time takes about 30 milliseconds, because we are sitting in Redmond.
Right,
You've got
but a tool could incorporate the fact that doing redirection for Boston is going to cost a certain amount, right?
If we can, that would be great. If you guys can build a tool like that, that will be really great. So what we are planning to do is, I mean, it's going to be next 3 to 4 months. I mean, it will take time because our operations fully hasn't. I mean, lots of OPMs do use, but some OPMs we are still pushing it to our OPMs. So once it becomes a religion for us, then we will push it to the developers. And David Cole does want to push this tool to the developers, and if we have a tool like that, that would be really great. Okay, during the testing phase itself, they can do it in many phases, how they're doing it. What we are planning to do is just put that the new version test page on some unpublished website and monitor using the keynote and see how it is doing compared with the previous version.
Given the current tools and data that you have right now, so that you can give a lot of people a lot of work to do to fix all these problems. is there any areas that you see that you need more tools in terms of how to break down things further, or how do you collect more data? It sounds like you have a lot of things that you can do to make sure that they fix all these issues.
Most of this we got over only last 6 months because we got focused from the senior management. So now we have enough work, but developers can go back and fix these things, most of the things, quickly. They did for channel zoom in, they did for eShop options. I'm sure eShop, when they redesign, they'll fix some other problems. Where we can really use a lot of help is in the content management.
You don't have a breakdown of what's going on in there, or
we get lots of content doesn't get propped properly because the projects fail, or server might be down, and when the server comes back up, they might, like say you have 40 servers and I might have taken one cluster down, so 4 servers, let's say, are down, and we are propping a new content. Okay, so when we prop the content, so 36 servers got the latest one, and we bring up this cluster and we might have forgotten to prop the new content. So for the next 3 hours, users are looking at the old data. Okay, people who go to that server. So
distributed data. Distributed content. What words distributed?
Yeah, it's because these servers, basically all our sites are distributed across. So that's going to be the problem, because we are not managing the content from one central place. We are propping from a stager, which is a central place, but that's just a stager. People are not coming there to get it.
So here's a question. How often, you're always updating your content, presumably.
Yes.
And yet there, every so often, are convenient times where you can check to see whether, for example, all the links point somewhere.
We check every hour for most sites.
So during that hour, you just stop updating and then you check?
No, those are 2 different processes. But see, when we check, we don't check on each server. When we use the webs, basically we are checking as though we are sitting outside and saying www.msn.com. So if the hit happened to be a server which already has the correct link, that will be okay. But so you might, it's not, most of the time you find the problems, okay, but so it so happens we won't be able to find the problem, because when we hit with the www.msn.com/123.asp, it might be there already on 36 servers, but might not be there on 4 servers.
And if you unfortunately
get one of the 36 servers, then it will be.
So you want to be able to tailor to a particular server and hit all of them, and be able to specify which one I want to go to.
Yeah. No, I want to solve the problem even beforehand. I don't want to. I mean, that is like so. I mean, that's a good start. So don't get me wrong. Solving that problem, saying after I prop the content to make sure that the links are there or not.
That's sort of finding the broken servers and you're not breaking that.
Yes, I would like to say if there is a possibility, which Yahoo does that, and I don't know what AOL does. I'm talking to other people. Instead of they propping into each of the web servers, they refer to like a file server, it seems, from NetApp or something. And some people use database, but not Yahoo. So you can have content on one server. So when you're propping onto only one server. Okay, and each of the front-end web servers, they're referring to this file server, which has got a huge cache. So all these images are in memory to start with. And that is easy, because what they can do is they have a hard backup for this, and they have a +1 version, so they don't never prop to a live directory. So they do to a +1 version, and where they have another website which is hitting only +1, they're checking at that point, and then they say 100% of links are valid, and they turn it on, the +1 version to the current version. So they don't have to check on every one of them, they have to check only in one place. So it's part of their daily process of propping the content. That would be one of the good solutions. I mean, there might be other solutions, at least that's to think about. And it's tough to convince now, because that involves a lot of dev work also. Tough to go back and convince, saying one file server is better than cropping the content on 40 web servers, because you really have to prove by the numbers saying this file server can handle that.
May I ask you about these different scenarios? If you have a downloading something, and you can have 2 part of it, and you click on one, it goes to the server that has not been updated yet, so you bring down the old ones. Then you click on the second one to download the second part of it. It goes to a new server. It could be possible they both can go
Not actually. If there is a link, I mean, link is being served from one server. It gets resolved.
Or did you get the full URL?
Yeah, because it's a URL getting resolved to a server, so it will go to only one server. I mean, one request is not being served by two servers at the same time.
So I have a thought based on what you said, and please tell me if you think it's correct or not. But as a developer yourself, it seems to me that the thing these people are missing is like a web page compiler. It's like if you write code, a compiler gives you two things. One is it tries to optimize the performance of the code you wrote based on some model it has, and second thing is it does some error checking. And here what's happening is somebody's writing some code for a web page and sending it off to you. And you guys are going to have to do both things later down the line, link checking and what's happening, redirection, etc. Because these people couldn't do that on the desktop.
No, if it is possible, that's fine. But because the HTTP is a stateless environment, I'm not sure because how it can during the compile environment, how it can go and check whether all the links are there or not. If it is possible, that's fine. And the ASP page is changing dynamically also. Another thing you have to keep in mind. So I'm not sure if that's a solution. I mean, that's the challenge for you guys to figure out.
I think the challenge that is perhaps at a larger scale. It's about taking maybe system-level descriptions, being able to deploy that to be able to talk about how a service performs rather than an individual page. It seems like a lot of the performance issues are, the metric may be how long does it take to download a page, but when you see that that's going bad, it's not necessarily one script. That could be indicative of a global system performance problem. So just a comment.
But see, that's why we do one. It's a question of like, say, I could argue. Like generally, I don't go to default pages. I have my own favorite pages that I would go, right? Some inside page. But in most cases, I mean, this is a study is done. Most cases, people behave based on their first experience with the web page. I mean, people still go to default page, and then from there they go. So if the default page is having problem, most likely the whole system also might be having problem. But at least that's a start for us. We are not saying when we say the page download went down 40%, for example, for search, it might not be that page problem, it is a search system problem. But at least this is giving an indication maybe there is a bigger problem with the system. And that's how most system engineers look at it. They don't try to solve that page problem. If it is a content error, that's a different thing. But even for content error, they see whether it is across all the pages that's happening. Okay, so maybe there is one directory might have been named wrong. So they just don't fix that one page, that wherever that image is being referred across the site might have been pointed to the wrong directory to start with. So they look at the whole system, but this gives an indication saying their site is having problem. So they just don't try to fix that one page. To give credit, they never do that.
One of the other goals of the whole effort is to make it possible for people, not at this scale, but say at the next level down, to run websites without having to have an operation staff. Well, actually, one of the stated goals is to do it at this level. That doesn't seem realistic to me. But,
Well, maybe because by then MSN will be so much larger, but we'll still.
okay, so that's reasonable. What are the things that could get rid of some of the tasks that currently have to be done manually, or which require? It seems like they require more time addition. And these might some of it is probably one of the things that you could have tools to make more streamlined in your own process that could then be possibly coming as part of the core tool set that you want to have.
Yeah, hopefully that will happen. We do want to reduce operational headache, because whenever you have operational overhead, that means because you're having problems. So when you reduce the problems, then there is operations automatically going to reduce. So if we push a lot of things towards tools, towards operating system, I mean, the best place would be solve the problem at the root. We're all for that. I mean, with the systems background we came, let's solve the problem at the root instead of solving it afterwards. That's why we're talking about content problem solving at the right place. We'll be I mean, we'll be more than glad if our operations overhead goes down. The way it can happen is by automating most of the processes. There is always going to be, like Microsoft.com, if you take example compared to MSN.com, they're always 100% available because they don't have one single ad from outside. All their content is published by Microsoft.com. It's because just within Microsoft. So for them, there are no third-party feeds, content feeds. So whenever you have third-party content feeds, if you don't have the right processes and right tools to verify and validate and fix, you're always going to have operational overhead. And you'll always have some operational overhead to do upgrades. And there's always going to be a problem. I mean, it would be nice to say we'll always have like a black box. It'll be running. I mean, if you have particularly one single server doing everything, that's most likely going to happen. Like if I have a mainframe or a Windows NT going into that level, where one single server is going to process everything, then you'll have a lot less operational headache. So the question is, the more number of servers you have, the more operational overhead you are going to have.
The things that you showed us today were mostly oriented towards serving up web pages. Have you looked at all measurability and other issues with services that are provided, say, by SOAP?
We haven't looked at that. Properties, I'm assuming, are looking at that. What I've shown is only the websites. We are trying to get the perf counters also. One thing is like to see CPU utilization, memory utilization, to see where we are hitting the peak. Like the number of ASP pages per second. I think it is already in one of the developers' box.
Well, so in answer to your question about this is just serving web pages, doing Passport doesn't just do that, right? It's behind the scenes, and you have different metrics for how.
We have a transactional way of doing it, so we just don't see at the page, even for search, even for chat. So what we do is, even for communities for that matter, we just don't take a web page and say web page is fine, everything is fine. For communities, for example, what we are doing now, we just started this 3 months ago. Before that, we were just doing page. We are moving away from server experience and even website experience to now we are going to the end user experience in a transaction way. So what we see is user comes, logs in, posts a photo and logs out, or sends a couple of messages to his community and or create a community. So different transactions we do that, and then we see whether everything is working or not. If something is not working, then we know there is a problem with community as a service. Same case with chat. Somebody goes in, creates takes a nickname, then logs into a chat room and then posts some messages and comes back. So we do all this automatically through a monitoring tool, and we collect the data. So right now we are not publishing it, but that's one of the things we are adding to it. And we do this even on Keynote. So from different cities also we do that.
This data specifically people with high-speed network?
Keynote has two different things. The one which I have here on CGOps Metrics is mainly with the LAN, with the high-speed access. If you go to CGOps Metrics Beta, then they have a dial-up also on it.
I'm sure the numbers are very different.
Yeah, it's about goes to 30 seconds if I'm not wrong. Okay.
Do you have any idea what the ratio is between the two in terms of number of customers on one versus the other?
In international, they say it's like 50-50. Okay, but the most number of pages they get is from the LAN, not from modem people. So that's why most of the time focus is on the LAN. Another thing, main reason operations effort is mainly on the LAN, because if there is a problem with the modem, like for example in somewhere in Idaho, this problem might be with the local ISP, and even if it's a big ISP, you can't really do anything about that. I mean, you don't have bandwidth to call every ISP in the world to say, okay, fix your connection. It's impractical. So we do have dial-up. See if I can get one of the eShop pages or something. So I have eShop electronics department page. Let's see how it does. Takes about 12 seconds versus 2.5 seconds on the LAN. That's not so bad. That's not actually bad on the mod. Because 3 seconds on the LAN is bad. 12 seconds on the modem is not bad because yeah, because this is going across multiple cities. So you have a server serving from Redmond to different cities on the modem. I mean, I consider that to be good. The MSN.com, let's see how that does. Let's see what it is. They didn't name consistently these things, so we want to go back and change that. I need to press go. I'm not used to running the beta site yet. So that's also not bad. About 10 seconds.
This is strictly US, right?
They have international ones also, and you can choose the location. So this is basically doing from US. So we can take the MSN UK or something. See, like Yahoo has Australia, Canada, so they have different ones. So let's see Yahoo UK cover page. They're actually good. They're actually good. 6 seconds. I mean, this might be one blip somewhere. And this is less than 90%. Maybe they had a problem here. Yeah, they had HTTP request problem. Somewhere some ISP might have screwed up their DNS settings or whatever. So this hour was bad. That's why. And you can go and actually, if you like, you can drill down why it happened. And they're doing only from London, so it's not a big deal. So some ISP might have screwed up.
So it sounds like you guys must be using this tool really heavily, right? It's got a lot of...
Yeah, we want this to be resilient. So we're using it, and we'll get nasty in another couple of weeks. We'll start publishing. Because right now we have a lot of primary domain controller problems. So if you turn on logging, right now it's anonymous. Anybody can go to, as long as they're on the intranet, anybody can go in. So people will be able to go even in the future, but we will log their user ID. So we will know who is accessing. So we want to make sure that in operations, those 70 people are using at least every day. Because that's how they run their sites. And so if they run their sites, they better have the data.
So I have a question about scaling. So how rapidly are these departments growing?
Search has grown tremendously in the last 6 months. I think this is it's like I used to be in IDSS, which was processing IIS logs for all these websites. So when I started, when we completed IDSS project, search was off of MSN.com. I think it was I could be throwing these numbers. It's like half of it, but I don't know exact the number. Today, search is about 10 million page views higher than MSN.com. And in the last 3 months, it's grown 30%. But in the last 6 months, it has grown, I think, more than 100% or so. So it's projected to grow. Search is doing exceptionally well. Some sites, if you let me see if I can go to IDSS, because they have primary domain controller problems and they turn on the logging. So I might not be able to access IDSS. I can access. But anyhow, I still won't be able to access it. I went to the page, but where it does the authentication with the primary domain controller, oh, it's okay. So now primary domain controller is in. Hello. It's not good, their website. How do I? Okay, I don't know. I mean, obviously they changed something on the web page, but IDSS should be able to show. Wow. Okay, let's see what it is. Okay. They're showing the blank page for some reason. The growth is very high, and it's tough to predict the growth.
So how, I guess I'm trying to understand how you do the planning for this growth and how the costs come in there.
The way we are doing right now, that's why we want to implement a capacity planning once we have the power counters to see. And today it is manually system engineers do it. They look at the power counters to see where the CPU is. They really don't want it to CPU utilization to go more than 40% or so, because there will always be like Wednesdays are always huge volumes compared to Saturday and Sunday.
So essentially it's all done by hand at this point?
It's done by hand. So, and it's not basically, I'm not saying it is ever going to be exact science, but it's mostly again by people's system engineers' gut feelings.
Right.
So they could be playing safe and they could be adding more servers than they needed. But if we have the data to back it up, that will be good. Like if we see every server is only 3% CPU utilization, which actually is the case with ads. But even though it's a 3% CPU utilization, the way it is written, that's because they have 2 CPUs or 4 CPUs on the server, but the app is single-threaded app, and so it's how good is having 2 servers or 4 servers. So the CPU utilization doesn't really reflect that. That's why we keep adding. I mean, ads has got 130 servers today. I mean, it's not it's a joke, but it's not a joke for operational people. This is host. But IDSS is a place where you will be able to get it. And what we are planning to do, assuming IDSS will cooperate, we'll have asset information and we'll have capacity planning. We want to have information about page views and unique users also, which IDSS provides. That's what they provide. What we want to do is we want to take the page views and see, by adding 100 servers more, if the unique users and page views haven't really gone up, then we can question why we added 100 servers to start with. Okay, any more questions?
Thanks for
Yes.
taking time out of your very busy schedule.
Yeah.
Stay in touch.